WNYLaborToday.com has been, of course, following and covering the budget deficit problem and the unfortunate decisions that Governor Patterson has been making in terms of state and public employees. I just want to read a couple of the headlines that we've published in recent weeks. PEF leaders lash out at Governor Patterson, saying unionized state employees deserve better than Patterson's incompetence and will hold New York accountable after Governor announces he will hold up workers' pay increases. PEF research reveals state government could save $656 million by implementing a number of cost savings recommendations. PEF President Ken Brynien says savings in proposed state budget could easily be achieved by reducing New York's reliance on costly private consultants. He also took time recently to praise Comptroller DiNapoli, who's made a public commitment to stand up for the integrity of the state pension fund. I guess there was some discussion about possibly sticking New York's nose into that. A lot going on. Tell me from PEF's perspective where things stand right now, and also some of the measures, some of the recommendations that your state union has made that the governor should be taking a look at in terms of trying to close this, what, $9.2 billion deficit, which I guess is a little more these days.
Yeah, every week it's different. It's a moving target, so that makes it difficult to deal with in the first place. But what we've been saying for many years is that the state continues to waste money. And there are a lot of ways the state wastes money, and we're not the only union that's claiming this. And what we've been trying to get each governor that comes into office to do is to at least take a fair look at the money that's being wasted and try to at least curb some of that waste. The one we talk about most frequently, because it affects our membership more directly than some of the others might, is the waste on outside consultants. If you use a state worker to do the job, they have a relatively competitive price and they provide good service over their entire career. If you go outside to try to save money, which is what the state claims often, what you're actually doing is paying either a 50% premium to sometimes double the price to sometimes as high as triple the price to get someone in to do the same work. What we find is that there are hundreds of millions of dollars altogether, if you put all this together, that if we stopped contracting it out and we allowed state employees to do the work, even if it means hiring more state employees, you could hire somebody at almost half the price most of the time. It's far more cost effective, and you'll have a loyal employee that's making a career out of civil service. What the state sometimes says to us is that jobs are only temporary. When we bring in a consultant, it's because we don't need a career civil servant. We just need a short-term job done. But then you look at cases where they're doing bridge inspection. Now, the state's been inspecting its bridges for the last couple of hundred years, and they're always going to be inspecting these bridges. A state employee can be brought in to inspect bridges with pension and health benefits and everything else. It'll cost you about $45 to $50 an hour. You bring in a consultant to inspect those bridges, it can cost you $150 an hour. And it's not a short-term project. You're going to always need to inspect bridges.
Why isn't the state getting what you just laid out from that common sense approach?
Well, from a psychology standpoint, one word I've used to describe this is an addiction. The state is addicted to contracting out. Even though it hurts the economy, even though it takes valuable money that taxpayers give to the state and throws it away on high-priced individuals that you don't need, the state is addicted to it for a couple of reasons. One, sometimes it's just easier. If you don't have to actually manage people, if you can just say to some company, you take care of it. I don't care what it costs. I'll pay you to do it. Some managers like that because it just eases their workload. Other times, we've learned that some of the managers do business with some of these companies because when they retire, they'd like to go work at these companies. And maybe this gives them an in when they retire. There are other individuals that have other kinds of connections to some of these companies, and periodically there'll be some trial because somebody contracted with a relative. There was a situation going on in Syracuse, I believe, last year, where in the Office of Mental Retardation, they were having some work done, and it turns out the people that were setting out the bids, the people that were winning the bids were actually relatives of theirs. So there's a host of bad reasons why the state continues to do that.
Why isn't the greater amount of New York State residents / taxpayers whose money is being used for this, why don't you think they're upset about what's going on in the realm of temporary workers in New York?
I don't think they really know. We've been trying to get this word out through press conferences and commercials and shows like this for years, but the state comes back and sort of pokes fun at it. Most recently, the public relations director for the governor, this was a number of weeks ago, said that our arguments are just air. Then the state came out through the governor himself and said the savings isn't really going to be there. And so now we have to fight common sense against rhetoric. And maybe the rhetoric just sounds nicer because it's a little harder for us to explain sometimes than it is to just make a one-word statement saying, well, the unions don't care. One recent comment that came out of the state capitol was that the only reason PEF is against use of outside consultants is because those consultants aren't union members. And that really wouldn't save any money, but we want the state to hire more people so we have more power, which is ridiculous. The governor said he wanted $250 million worth of savings out of the workforce. In my mind, the workforce means everybody that gets paid by the state. Those are the 200,000 state employees. Those are the 100,000 consultants that the state uses. If you're going to either cut salaries or furlough or lay off or do anything else, rather than hurting the career people, why don't you start reducing the use of these consultants? You'll save far more money.
Doesn't it make more sense for labor and state government to work together to accomplish that end result rather than this merry-go-round that's gone on and on with these emergency and disaster budgets that are being passed on a weekly basis? And as we move forward, the governor keeps shoving down the throats of, I'm going to say, taxpayers, exactly what he wants, instead of looking at some of these very solid and good recommendations that PEF and others are making.
It's sometimes just so hard to explain why. We think we have some progress that's being made right now. We're working with the legislature on a bill. We're calling it our cost-benefit analysis legislation. And what it essentially says is the state can contract out work, use consultants, whatever they want to call these other people that they use. But before they do that, they have to demonstrate that it's cost-effective. They have to prove that hiring state employees won't be cheaper, that the work can't be done. What we've always said is if there's certain expertise that's needed, if it's a very short-term project, if some company has equipment that the state doesn't own, you shouldn't have to purchase it for just a short project, then contract it out. But prove that that's the case. If you just need more people to do inspections or audits or other kinds of services that the state always does anyway, prove that those outside people are going to do it cheaper. If not, then just hire more staff to do it. One of the biggest problems is the division of budget in trying to keep costs down will put a cap on how many people an agency can hire. So it will go to DOT or the Department of Health and that, or whatever other agency there is, and they say we need more people to do X job. And division of budget says, well, you're capped, you can't hire anymore. So the agency says, well, we can't hire, but we still need to do the work. So instead of hiring someone at a $50,000 salary, we'll contract out for somebody with $100,000, but we haven't hired because they're not our employee. It's crazy, but everybody points the finger at each other as to why it's happening.